So we understand the basics of Tor. It's time to now finally dive into onion routing so you can better understand how Tor actually encrypts your internet traffic and how that keeps you safe from people online. To start, I wanted to show you a brief graphic. This is on the EFF website, the Electronic Freedom Foundation, I believe is what it stands for. And this is just kind of a basic overview of when you're using Tor, what actually is dangerous. So they're circled in the purple circles are everyone that can actually eavesdrop while you're using Tor. So even though Tor is secure, there are still people who can see you. Obviously, the first level of people being able to watch you is going to be hackers on your actual Wi-Fi. If they're looking at your internet or on your Wi-Fi, they can see all that information there. They can see the website you're going to, the user and password if that applies, the data you're sending, and your physical location. Then, when you actually send out your traffic, it does still have to go to your internet service provider. And from here, the police can see it, system administrators and lawyers, and they can see pretty much all the same stuff as if they were on your own Wi-Fi network. And this is why it's important to incorporate a Tor bridge or VPN as well. Once you are past that step, the actual NSA can still see between your ISP and your first Tor relay. And if they are actually communicating with somebody who's watching the exit node as well, they would have to be someone before and after the exit node, but they can share that information and then they would also be able to see you. And we'll talk about that in a minute here. The actual website you are going to, whoever runs that can see the information from you as well. So there is a lot of vulnerability points when using Tor. It is not perfect, and you can see that some of the biggest issues with Tor are things like where that NSA watch point is, how if they can see you before the first node and after the exit node, they can see what info you have, obviously any hackers on your network, your ISP, and the actual site you're going to. So there's a lot of different points of failure, and we're going to cover each one and how to protect yourself from each. Tails already protects you from that hacker side. That's actual on your network, that'll help you with that, and then it'll kind of help with your ISP, but that's more for like a VPN and things like that. So let's take a look at onion routing, kind of give you a basic understanding of how onion routing works, and then we'll go into a little bit more about the vulnerabilities. So to understand onion routing, you first have to understand how the normal internet works. For this example, we'll have to build our own computer and kind of go through the systems that are used to connect to the internet. So first, you'll of course need a computer that is running Tor. Now, it won't be running Tor quite yet, but eventually it will need to be running Tor for this example. On that computer, you'll want a network card so it can connect to the internet, and an operating system because no computer works without an operating system. On that operating system, you'll most likely have a browser installed, something like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Safari, doesn't matter, just something that allows you to connect to the internet. And then of course you'll also need a destination where you are going. Now normally when you connect to the internet, your data will go through your browser, out your network card, and then across the internet to the other person's network card. There's a lot of different information in the middle here. Obviously, a lot more happens in between these first and final steps, but this is a basic overview of what you need to know. So you can see when you're connecting like this, anyone on the destination or anyone along the way can see your network card, can see the browser you're using, the operating system. They can pretty much see all that information because slight bits of it are carried with that data that you are sending. So this is where Tor comes in really handy. So for the Tor example, you'll first need to make sure you of course have Tor installed on your computer. And this is the Tor proxy. This is not the Tor browser. It's important to note that for this example right now, it is just using the proxy. So we're still using a normal browser, say like Firefox or Chrome, but we have the proxy installed on our desktop. The proxy will filter all of the data we send to the internet. So the proxy follows a few steps before it actually allows us to send our data to the internet. It'll first find all the available nodes on the network, and it'll pick 3, at least a minimum of 3, and it will begin to configure them. It'll hit that next step, which it'll actually pick the entry node and establish a session key with it, or a secure key, an encrypted key, and then from there, if it goes successful, the actual circuit will be built and keys will be established between each node. It's important to note here, the exit node won't establish a key with the entry node, won't establish a key with your actual Tor proxy. They each only establish keys with each other along the way. So once that circuit is built, we can begin our first connection to our entry node, and that will actually begin the session key. So this is what verifies the connection is working and builds our encrypted tunnel to send our information through. Once the first entry node has its connection, it'll begin to build the second tunnel, the second and middle node, and it'll go through there. And then once that is successful, it'll build the last tunnel to the exit node. And once that is complete, then the data can actually be sent out. Now, this whole process of building layers of encryption is why this is called onion routing. You can see how these layers of encryption are similar to layers of an onion, and that's where it gets its infamous onion routing name. But this is not a perfect system. While there are some major benefits of it, there are some issues as well. Some of the benefits are that the entry node, middle node, and exit node all see different things. So your entry node, it can see who you are. So if anyone has control over that entry node, they can see who you are on the network, where you're coming from, and any basic information like that. And they can also see the next node. However, because there is another node after the next node, they can't see your destination. So the entry node can see who you are, but doesn't know where you're going. The middle node then sees the first node and the next node, but doesn't know any information about that. So if someone had control of the entry and middle node, they still wouldn't be able to see your destination, even though they could probably see who you are. We then have the exit node, which is the last point in this system, and it can see the middle node and your destination, but luckily cannot see who you are or where you are coming from. This is why onion routing requires a minimum of 3. Any less, and this system would be broken. Now, 3 is kind of the perfect number. They try to not have more than that, as it adds more points of failure. So 3 is usually how many nodes you will be connected to when using the Tor browser. But like we talked about before, this system is not perfect because you can see there's no encryption between the exit node and the destination. This is why you have to be very careful when you're sending any personal information, anything like a name, an address, or if you even log into your personal Facebook, anything that can identify you personally, who you are, or if you use any of the similar services and log in with the same account, it basically destroys your anonymity and your privacy while using Tor. That's why this last point here is considered a snoop point. And this is why we send information like a personal address or your name or anything that could identify you. That's why we encrypt it with PGP encryption. That ensures that at that point, if anyone sees anything like that, any data, they can't actually understand it. It's also important that you use websites that have that HTTPS encryption. So you'll notice on the address bar of the website how it's all green by the front of its name, the HTTPS. That just ensures there's end-to-end encryption. So that would also be a good way to ensure that your data can't be seen or understood by somebody who is snooping maybe between that exit node and the destination server. There is another vulnerability with Tor. Notice how in this example we weren't using the Tor browser, and this is where failure can occur as well. If any websites have Flash video or JavaScript or any other thing that requests different permissions from your computer, it will circumvent the Tor proxy and still leak information about you. It's usually DNS leakage, so they can see maybe your IP or where you're coming from or the actual operating system you're using, or notice that you're using the Tor proxy. They can see a lot of different information. This is why it is very important that you use the Tor browser and the Tor proxy. It protects you from things like traffic leakage, prevents you from being found out or breaking your anonymity. So that is the basic way of how the onion routing system works. It's not too terribly complicated. We could go way more in depth about the encryption and how it actually establishes the keys and how it connects and how it builds the circuit. But you don't really need to know all of that to have a good understanding of Tor. It's important to understand these systems because you need to know where you are vulnerable at any point in the process. That is the whole point of using the deep web and using this course. If you want to purchase things off of darknet markets, you do not want to have any information leak or be caught, because that is your right as an internet user. So it's important to understand the steps involved, and so you can mitigate your risk at every opportunity given. So hopefully you have a better understanding of onion routing. You're going to take a little quiz after this to test your knowledge, and then after that we are going to dive into installing Tor on Windows and Mac machines. We're going to be focusing on the Windows desktop, but I'll give you a rundown of the Mac as well. However, in this course we're going to be using Tor almost exclusively on the Tails operating system. So it'll look the same and generally feel the same, but if you want to be using Tor correctly, I strongly suggest you use it on the Tails operating system for the remainder of this course. Head to the next video to get started on that, and if you have any questions, be sure to message me directly. See you in the next one.